Hello, everyone. How's it going? This is Sanjay. I am on the marketing team for Nisei. That's a new development. But I'm here in my capacity as a burgeoning interviewer, and I have lined up some interviews for us today. I am thrilled about the new Midnight Sun release, and to sort of celebrate it and to learn more about it, we are going to be interviewing Morgan, the narrative director for Nisei, and after that, we're going to have an interview with Ruben and Jamie from the rules team. It should be a wonderful time. Uh, our first interviews with the narrative team, I'm really excited about this just because I feel like there's a lot of lore to dive into. We are aiming for about an hour, so hopefully we get into everything we want to get into. But without further ado, let me introduce my first guest. We have Morgan, the narrative director for Nisei. Hello, Morgan.
Hello, hello. It's good to be here. Thanks for organising this and having me on.
Yeah, it is really, thank you. I haven't done a lot of these interviews. You're my first interview, so thank you for being my guinea pig here. Appreciate it. I hope to do more because I feel like there's so much to talk about in terms of the narrative for Nisei stuff. There's so much to talk about for the rules team. A lot. Basically, every department has so many interesting stories. I'm hoping we can do a lot of good stuff. And as I get better and better at this, uh, why don't we start off just Morgan? Would you like to introduce yourself? How did you get into Netrunner? Who are you? What do you like?
Sure. Well, I'm Morgan Anzekay White. I am a game designer, narrative designer, and games writer from Perth in Australia. I've been playing Netrunner since let me think. It would be uh, early 2014. I got into Netrunner. Let me think. So in late 2013 was the first PAX in Australia, and I went to that with like a whole bunch of my friends. And I didn't actually see Netrunner myself while I was there, but another friend of mine did, and he, knowing that I'm was really quite into cyberpunk and stuff, uh, ranted about it to me and was like, you should totally check this game out. It's really cool." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, I'll look into it." So I think I looked it up, and I was like, "Yeah, this seems interesting. I should look into it more sometime." And I sort of forgot for a couple of weeks, and then I think it was Quinton Smith from Shut Up and Sit Down, who I followed at the time, mentioned that he was going to be on an episode of Terminal 7, and I was curious about Netrunner and always was interested in like hearing Quinz's opinions on things. And I used to listen to podcasts at work in the morning when I was still working retail then. So I fired up the episode of Terminal 7 that had Quinz on it and got thrust right into the middle of all of the Netrunner, gobbledygook and all the stuff that didn't quite make sense, but still kind of did. And there was something about the fact that I could just jump into a podcast with three people who had been playing it for ages and were talking about, you know, stuff that I didn't really understand already, but somehow the context made enough sense to me that it was intriguing and very interesting. And so I sort of hopped online, looked it up again, and um, sort of I think I like mentioned something about it on Facebook, and I had a friend contact me and be like, "Hey, I've got a copy of like the core set and the first um, data pack that I never used. Do you want to buy them off me, and I can teach you the game at the same time?" So we met at like one of the game stores here, and he taught me how to play, and I bought his cards and had a pretty fun time. And I think I ended up getting some more while I was there, like some of the other early data packs from the first cycle. And I played it with some friends. I played it with my dad, just like teaching people. And then I found out that another friend of mine played a bunch, and we played some. And then I heard that there was going to be a game night, like game night kit tournament thing at the same store that I was at before. So I went along and I convinced that other friend of mine to come with me, so that because I can be a little shy when meeting lots of new people sometimes, and so having somebody else there that I knew would help. And we went, and I had a fantastic time. And when I got home that evening, I ordered online every single data pack and like big box I didn't have yet.
How
And that's how I got into Netrunner.
how tricky is it to get Netrunner data packs in Australia? How hard was it back then? I know there's a lot of shipping
Oh,
trouble down there.
not very.
Yeah.
Like they were in stores. Like our local store would get stuff in for it. Like they knew us and knew us well, and we had tournaments there and everything. And so they'd take like pre-orders and would get um, stuff in for us. So in that regards, it wasn't that bad, no. But I think all the stuff I ordered online, I can't remember where I ordered it from. It might have been from like their like warehouse over east or something. But it was because it was just a whole bunch, and I wanted to make sure I got everything that I didn't already have. I just ordered
You
ordered
were
all of them.
yeah, you were really bought in at that point. That's
Oh yeah, like
yeah.
just immediately, like, yep, I want to keep playing this. I want all the cards.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I loved your mention of the Terminal 7 interview with Quinn's. I feel like something about that podcast that was so endearing is that they just had this enthusiasm and energy uh,
Yes.
for the game that I can totally see you not even totally understanding what they're talking about, but still being like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah, it's hard to think back on like exactly the sorts of things that they were talking about that did or didn't make sense, but I pretty quickly began to understand like the general concepts of the game and how it worked. And I think they were talking about like Quinn's favorite stuff, and I think he'd been talking about HB a bunch, and just all the stuff to do with like the bioroids was just really intriguing. Uh, but yeah, there is. I do miss Terminal 7. Their energy and just relentless positivity was consistently fantastic. I really, really, really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I don't want to put, everybody's doing their own thing. I do feel like I don't know if you've listened much to Retromancer. I feel like they get to that like unbridled enthusiasm in a really nice way. Um, though they also have a better understanding of card interactions. Apologies to the Terminal 7 team. I love you. Um, now you mentioned you touched on this a little bit in terms of sort of first hearing about the bioroids of HB. Particularly as you are the narrative lead. What was your first? Uh, what do you recall about how you got into sort of the narrative around the game and our cyber noir or cyberpunk or regular future?
So, like the catchphrase that I always have for why I love Netrunner so much, and also why I think it's such a game that is really popular amongst game developers of all kinds, is because it's such a fantastic fusion of theme, narrative, and mechanics. Like you are making runs on servers that are physical, spaces on the table. Like there are, special terms for your hand and your deck and your archives. There are like just all of, the word res, the concept of installing things. Like all of it is just integrated into how the game plays at a very fundamental level. It is impossible to split the themes and the narrative and the story concepts from how the game plays. And I've always found it amusing when some players have been like, yeah, I don't really care too much about like the lore or fluff of the game. I just like the mechanics, and I'm like, yeah, like I can absolutely understand people having that counter outlook, but I bet you if the game didn't have that level of integration of theme into the mechanics, there would be a lot of those players who probably wouldn't have been as interested in the game or stuck with it for as long as they have, because those those elements just help make things make sense. Uh, I think like June has talked a little bit about this to do with the new keywords that we brought in with Borealis, but there is a kind of like a bit of a psychological trick you can do where by having terminology that fits within the universe and makes sense within the narrative of a game, you can make it stick in people's brain better. You can make it more fascinating, interesting, just by virtue of doing that. And that's one of the things that like keywords enables games to do, as well as, the whole idea of like cutting down on text and making things easy to, understand or whatever. Um, but like to me, the reason that I was excited about the concept of new keywords was for that sort of thing compared to anything else. But that's sort of, my role in this say is to get excited about theme stuff.
Sure,
So
sure. When you play a Chestushka, you're not just trashing a collection of four cards off of HQ and R&D. You are sabotaging four. You're doing a big sabotage.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Um, I'd also love to ask you, you know, if you could bridge the time from, you getting into Netrunner, the period of time where, um, you know, Nisei took over Netrunner, and how did you get involved with Nisei?
Hmm. So after I got, bought all the cards, I started going. I think it was like every week at the time. We had like league nights at that store, and I just went to them every week. Sometimes that friend of mine would join me, sometimes not. I made, friends of tons of other people there. Other friends of mine, either like were already playing but going to like another store that was on the other side of town, or they started playing later. My mentor, Anthony Sweet, who's another game designer, games writer, um, he started playing at some point, and it was actually one of the I think it was I met him at a conference in like 2014, and then like via mutual friends. And I think after we found out that we both played Netrunner, we just kind of meet up frequently, even outside of do like regular other meetups to just play, and that's one of the reasons that we got to know each other so well. Uh, that's right. We used to get like before one of the other sort of game nights. We used to go and have dinner together and just talk about work stuff or whatever beforehand, and that's like one of the other reasons why this game is very very special to me. And I got pretty good at the game. Like I don't think I could really hold much of a flame to some of the really elite players out there, or some of the people who've won nationals or store champs frequently. I've won several store championships. I've come second or third at multiple regionals. Um, I've come like I don't know what I came at the two nationals I've been to. I did come like top 32 or something at a Worlds, like one of the online Worlds, maybe top 32. I don't remember. Um,
I mean,
I feel like my
anybody can top 32 a world. It's not a big deal.
that's true, but for like the my sleepy corner of the world, I've definitely been one of our stronger players, and yeah, it's always nice. But I did try to play competitively, essentially, which I think when you start trying to play competitively, you have a different outlook on the game. And that's sort of what I'm, just mostly trying to bring up by talking about that is that, yeah, my perception of everything shifted from that process. I'm currently having a Daeg climb on me. So, 1 second.
that's
Hello.
that's
Okay.
that's very
All right.
resonant.
Daeg has joined. Daeg has joined us for the interview.
Oh, the first
Um,
netcat. I'm not running video because
so
I'm not running video right now because my poor computer could probably barely handle it. But if you want a
that's
picture,
very fair.
if you want a picture of what's going on in my guest's situation, just imagine that this boat is Morgan, and that's Dig.
It is roughly like that. So,
I do think
yeah,
it's
I think like
lovely.
we started end up having. Oh yeah, sorry, go
Oh
on.
yeah, I do think it's lovely that for so many players, you were talking about how meaningful the lore of the game is. I
Mm.
have this very fond recollection of listening to this Sprawl playthrough podcast, Full Immersion. Absolutely lovely. And there was this one scenario where their group was trying to infiltrate a hotel, and there was a question of whether they needed a Bioroid staff attending to them or human staff. And Chris Dyer, world champion, just interjected, you want Bioroid staff because they can't testify against you in court. Just, simultaneously our world champion, but also invested enough in the lore to know um, to know this esoteric detail that probably people within this universe might not know. And it sounds like you're the same way, that you know the lore and the rules and the gameplay and all of it just is so neatly packaged together that um, you it's easy to buy into all of it. Um, yeah, just
Yeah,
made me reflect on how it's so cool that not only are there lore heads who are like, oh, I just like the pictures and whatnot. I just like the universe, but the just in playing the game, it gets you hooked into the lore as well. Um, I cut you off. Go on.
uh, that's right. Yeah, I was just gonna say like there were some other stores started running stuff and then eventually stopped running stuff, and it's mostly just like the one place that does things now. And we had, I think at one point we had like 5 store champs in like one year in Sleepy Little Perth, which was kind of awesome. I went to nationals twice, and had the first one was not. It was a good day for hanging out with people and a bad day for playing Netrunner for me. But that is a long story for another time. And then the second one was a really good but really weird day of playing Netrunner, and also just a fun day as well. But I think both times I just sort of enjoyed getting to meet all the people from over east in Australia who played Netrunner, and just getting to hang out with them and getting to know a bunch of them, and like going to dinner afterwards, or going to like a side event on the Sunday or whatever. That kind of stuff was always nice.
Nice. Now, how did you get?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then I think like when the game got discontinued, I think like by then I was floating around in Slack a little bit, and I think that was really the only like concrete Netrunner community that I would have considered myself even slightly a part of. And I saw like the Nisei stuff happen, and I was intrigued as a game dev, and wondered how it was going to go with like them getting it set up. And then I think when they put out like the call for just like regular like non-lead staff, I was like, you know what? Why not? Like this sounds like fun. My work isn't super consistent, so I have time. Why not? So I think I I applied for design, dev, and like the writing team. And if I remember correctly, Dave, the lead dev, like saw my application and immediately was like, I want this person for the dev team. So so that was that. So yeah, so then I started in dev. I ended up taking over as playtest coordinator pretty quickly, as our first one wasn't really able to commit time after all. I was sort of Dave's sort of 2IC for pretty much all of my first stint in dev. Then I took a break from Nisei for like 8 months, and then came back. And I was just in dev for a while. And I did a bit of the writing stuff, sort of on the side to help out here and there, or just because I felt like it. And then after Holly stepped down, Dis or Ian took over sort of as interim creative director for a while, and then I ended up becoming the new um, creative director, though now narrative director is the title I preferred for it.
That's great.
Yeah, so that's kind of the big bridge from start to now.
That's great. Thank you. I was thinking it'd be nice to maybe dive in a little bit on the lore of Midnight Sun, if you don't mind. Um,
Yeah, sure, of course.
we do have some uh, audience questions already. If you're in the chat, I am keeping an eye
Yeah.
on the chat as well, so we will take some of those too. But just to get started, how did we come to the Arctic Circle?
Let me see. So this was actually not my decision, but rather Ian's. So it was so Borealis was actually in like early sort of theme and a little bit of design pre-production before we decided to do Gateway. Like originally it was going to be Ashes and in Borealis, but it was sort of partway through Ashes stuff that the topic of making a sort of start a new player product kind of thing came up, and um, collectively we kind of decided that would be the best thing to do next. So we did that, and so Borealis sort of went on the back burner for a bit. But so it was, I believe it was Ian and I've got this written down here. It was yeah, here we are. So the true genesis of Borealis is Pat slapping the table and going, environmentalism, and Ian replying, oh shit, yeah, but where? To quote Ian for verbatim, and gave me permission to do this. Um, and basically, I think it was like he and Pat, that's Pat Blue HG, were sort of working on it together until the Arctic choice was workshopped. And then I think he stepped down from Nesse around the time that happened. But so originally they were looking at a couple of other regions. And I think the Arctic choice ended up happening because of the idea of, uh, well, A, it was like areas that hadn't been explored in the FFG fiction at all prior. Like nothing in Europe or like, North Canada or Greenland or anything around there at all. And it was also like fairly bare in, say, like Worlds of Android as well. So we had a lot of space to work in. So that was part of the reason, but also because, there's with global warming and a lot of other, biodiversity drops, ocean issues, stuff in the Arctic Circle is actually like quite genuinely affected, and it was an interesting, area to explore these kinds of angles. But yeah, so that decision was made like goodness, it would have been like 2018, 2019 sort of thing. So that's how we ended up in the Arctic, and then the original sort of concept that was laid out by Ian that I followed more or less for Borealis was starting in northern Siberia. And then in Parhelion, the focus is going to shift more towards Greenland and North Canada and the sort of actual areas of the Arctic Ocean around the two of them.
Oh, that's very exciting. Yeah, I think just uh, one thing about the Arctic Circle as a setting is that I mean, this is probably true of any place, but it's not just one culture that you're speculating on in the future. You have so much to work with, and you see that in the cards. There's a lot of different um, traditions, cultures, languages that you draw on for
Mm-hmm.
the Arctic Circle. It's really lovely. Actually, we had a audience question say, that I actually didn't look at that said what inspired the decision to choose the setting for the Boreas cycle, and I think you just answered that pretty well. And there was a follow-up question to that from the same person, and this might not be
Mm.
something you're at liberty to speak on, but I did just want to share the question, and it is: as a fellow Australian and someone who was disappointed to find that we only have a small portion of one page in Worlds of Android, when are we getting the cycle set in Australia? So,
Oh, well, okay. So I'm gonna do something slightly naughty
nice.
because I feel like it. Um, and because I think occasionally, Morgan gets to be a little naughty as a treat. So, and I know, like June is often quite happy to talk about future stuff as well. So, our so we've got the next cycle is already in playtesting. The one after that is in sort of like mid point design, like pre-production. And then the one after that, which is currently mostly just like a glimmer in our eyes, that one is going to that's like the first one that I'm getting to work on from the very start of it. That one's going to be partly set in Australia and other places around that our corner of the world down here. So it'll be more than just Australia. It'll be like New Zealand and Southeast Asia and Oceania as well. And that is all I will say on it. But that's where that particular cycle is going to be set. And I'll let people speculate about where the two in between, where I believe the code names are known, where yeah they are from the production articles have shown the names from the 12 Trello. So the next one is called Bell Tower, and then the one after that is Piggy Bank, and then this one is Squid Island. Uh, so yeah, Squid Island is set down in our corner, and I guess we would be aiming for that one to be out in 2015, 2025, if we continue going with the one cycle per year kind of target, with Bell Tower being 23 and then 24 for Piggy Bank, but we'll have to see, I guess. So yeah, little tiny bit of scoops.
Oh, nice.
Uh,
I'm a good
that
interviewer. I'm
I don't
getting.
know. Most people will probably forget about it by the time it comes around anyway.
Thank you for that. Exciting. Um, that sounds really fun. Um, okay. Let's also talk about. I think I'd like to maybe get a little bit into the nitty gritty. Now, I personally have
Hmm.
read all the lore, and so don't take these questions as um,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm not into it. I am. And actually one of the things that I sometimes know, if I'm reading lore with not a lot of bandwidth, sometimes I'll just zone through. And I was wondering if you could sort of summarize where everybody's at in the Midnight Sun cycle. What is Essa up to? What is Sable up to? What is uh Captain Isbister up to? Um yeah.
Sure. All right. I'll start with Essa. So Z is how do I put this? So obviously, like the whole ecological terrorism stuff is basically Essa's whole angle. And originally, Essa was actually a worker on one of Ops like mining barge things, because people got to have a job, and then eventually started a union. So this is actually like a union person, and one of the like big kind of angles in sort of underlying a lot of S's stuff is about the idea of like collective action and uh, workers' rights being part of human rights like inherently. And so that's why you do kind of get some concepts of like solidarity and comradeship in sort of underlying a lot of S's stuff. So like Chastushka, the whole concept of what the steel skin implants are. Augustina is obviously also, union related. The flavor text is quite heavily, implies that. And I think like those are the ones in Midnight Sun that like heavily fit into like that particular theme. But obviously, Essa is not in said union anymore. It no longer runs it and is now effectively a fugitive uh, eco-terrorist who operates almost exclusively against Wayland's operations in northern Siberia, both along the coast and uh, along the Op River. So yeah, Essa is currently doing that sort of stuff, but you'll there will be some progression happening over time with Essa, uh, because now I get to Sable. So the thing about Sable is that
Oh, actually,
Sable's
could I
may have.
ask
Oh
you
yeah, yeah, go on.
one question? Looking at the Anarch lore, something that struck me was
Mm,
the I think in the past some of the depictions of there's been some tension between the androids of the setting, bioroids, clones,
mm,
who've been cheap labor for the corporation, and
mm,
um, particularly anarchs who are very interested in the welfare of the people they represent, whose jobs are taken, and particularly in Chastushka, I think it's very striking that they're in solidarity with androids. Um, can you talk about that? Can you talk about a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So if you look at the first line in the Chastushka that's on Chastushka, it says we're all alike down here, and that's referring to like all the workers down doing all the shitty ass work on the whaling barges or in the mining and all that stuff. Kind of a little bit of this was really inspired by some episodes from older science fiction TV series, such as Babylon 5, the remake of Battlestar Galactica and of Deep Space Nine. They all have Union-related episodes, one or two or three of them, and they all involve in some way people who do, you know, manual kind of shitty labor. So, like especially like the one in Battlestar Galactica, which has them doing, refining fuel for the rest of the fleet in really dangerous, horrible conditions. And that sort of like that is part of what inspired that particular first line because at one point people get drafted to go and help out in the refinery ship from all kinds of different other ships, people who don't have any experience doing that kind of thing. And yet they were in that situation with the conditions they were dealing with, they were all the same. They were all alike. And there's that in Babylon 5 as well, with all the different aliens, and then yet again the same in Deep Space Nine. So I guess also from like my own experience of working in like retail and other sort of some other industrial stuff, when kind of push comes to shove and you're there working in the same tough kind of environment together, a lot of barriers tend to not matter as much as they might elsewhere. And so to me, I can't picture these people working working for all this, shitty Wayland stuff, having, any prejudices that are that strong lingering, especially when so many of them are going to be from all around the world, because Wayland's going to pull workers from anywhere they can get them, especially since OP is, not only do they do all the mining, but they ship it around the world as well. So they're going to have, ships coming from all over the place with all sorts of people. And, another big kind of theme is the idea of like climate refugees, people who are traveling from places that are getting much more affected to areas where there is more work available, or there is, you know, better places to live that aren't as hot or flooded or whatever. And so, yeah, that was sort of Yeah, like a refuge campaign is a big one for that kind of idea. Yeah. So yeah, Chastushka was kind of meant to be about that. That everyone who worked together in that kind of environment, it didn't really matter. They were all kind of the same, and they were all comrades for each other, especially when it came to collective action and collective work.
Thank you.
So yeah, that was the thought for that.
While we have, I have the card Chestushka up here. What is a Chestushka?
What is it?
Yeah, I know you're counting
Uh,
these lines
so
here.
yeah, so a Chestushka is it's basically a loosely rhyming um, sort of folk poem or folk chant or folk song from Russia, especially in Siberia. And they're usually like either politically ironic or intentionally very silly and funny, often very vulgar. There are some that I found when doing research that are extremely vulgar, like sort of absurdly, hilariously so. And they were, used a lot in industrial stuff and for, political chants and all that jazz. So yeah, they're usually 4 lines, often using either A or um, A B C D, which I think is what I did here, maybe. Forget exactly. Yeah. So anyway, I was like, look, if the card's called Chastushka and we have 4 fists on it, and you're sabotaging 4, and it's got 4 influence, and it was originally 4 credits to play, I've got to put a Chastushka like on the card in flavor text. We actually had to do a bit of trickery to get it to fit in the proper 4-line format, but thankfully Kevin was able to uh, manage to do that for us with a little bit of kernel, yeah, kerning on the text and stuff, which I'm very happy about.
Are you mad that it costs 3?
Uh, um, so yes and no. Uh, like, and the recursiveness is gone, but on the other hand, if it means the card actually sees play, then I'm glad.
I forget what. Yeah, I think there's a currents are banned, but I think if you have a rolling brownout out, you can play this for 4. So
Sorry, Sanjay, you cut out there.
I said currents are banned, but I think if you have a rolling brownout, you can play this for 4. I might be misremembering, but Eternal players, try that out.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall we talk about what's going on with criminals this cycle, this set?
Yeah. So Sable. Um, so the first thing I will say about Sable is that for those of you who have read Threads in Blue, you will have noticed the message at the top that says that Sable's getting an ongoing story. The second installment of which will hopefully come out within the next, like, sort of, I'll say like 10 days, something like that. And then I'm hoping to have them dropped once every 2 weeks from there. Um, so Sable is getting this like ongoing arc storyline that has her traveling from uh, where she begins prior to Threads in Blue, all the way up through to where Parhelion is mostly focused, and um, has a the kind of story arc through there. I'll probably not elaborate too much because there's I'd
Sure.
like people to read it all and stuff
Yeah,
for
yeah.
themselves. But um, yeah, she actually originates from down. I haven't got the town name on the top of my head, but it's down in like southwestern Ukraine. She's like Turkic Ukrainian. Her family, her father is Turkish and her mother is Gaguz, which is like another Turkic ethnic group that is from like Ukraine and Romania, and that kind of area. So she's sort of, how do I put this? So a lot of her like theme and personal cultural heritage comes from being Ukrainian and Turkic, but she's also lived in Siberia for a lot of her adult life, and to some degree has had to assimilate to exist there. And so there's a sort of like a conflict, between wanting to not stand out and wanting to fit in, but also expressing a lot more of her roots in how she does stuff in NetSpace. Uh, and so that's why you see her in clothing that is much more traditionally East Slavic or Russian kind of style sort of stuff. But then you have things like you know, all of her like her programs and well, most of her programs, and like pinhole threading and backstitching, which are all in some way related to her own like family history in that regards.
Oh, that's lovely. I would say if you all in the chat have not read the Threads in Blue story, I think I would highly recommend it. If for no other reason, it just I always love when there's just like reading a lore gives you more of a story um, went into an individual card, and I think there's some parts of it that just do carpe diem, like the art going on in carpe diem, just like is spelled out in Threads of Blue. It's really nice. Um,
Mm.
would you say
There's
that?
a reference to her pan weave as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. True, true, true. Yeah, I think this card wasn't out when I read Threads in Blue, so I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, that's true. Um, yeah, that's great, and I definitely see the different connections to Sable's family and where Sable comes from. Like, small example. Do you want to tell people what Chesva is, if they don't know?
Yeah, so uh, the word itself refers to the long-handled pot in the middle, which is used for making Turkish coffee. And it's like a loan word in a lot of sort of the Eastern Slavic kind of regions and countries, like Ukraine, Romania, and also some parts of Russia. It's sort of a loan word, or it might be slightly different in some of the languages, but a lot of them like originate from there because with the sort of connection of like Central Asia and parts of Eastern Europe and North Asia, there's a lot of sort of melting pot cultural stuff happening there. Um, yeah, so it's used for making Turkish coffee, which is sort of I know the process of making it. I actually, when I was writing, like getting ready to write the flavor text for this card, I basically dedicated like a whole day to figuring out Sable's relationship to coffee. So I went into town, I went to a Turkish cafe. I had lots of Turkish coffee, and I talked to the barista about it and got him to tell me what like the three main things to him when he makes it are, and they're the three things that I mentioned there in the flavor text.
Oh,
Um, so like the feel of the coffee, the smell of the caramelizing sugar, and the gentle heat of the flame. So I did that, and then I came home and I started up like making some of my own coffee so that I had the smell of brewing coffee in the house. And then I sat down and wrote out a bunch of ideas for this and then settled on this one.
that's really lovely. Thank you. I think I might accelerate a little bit and jump to our Shaper friends, if you don't mind. Just because I
Yeah,
want to make sure we have time for our audience questions as well.
yeah, of
Tell
course.
me about our captain, my captain. Tell me about Padma.
Yeah, so Padma isn't strictly from like the Arctic Circle area. Um, she's actually, I think, would be from Yeah, she's probably from Shetland, like the Shetland Islands, which is like where her last name kind of originates from. I think that's where Ian said he sort of imagined her like family being from. But she's also part Indian, which is where her first name comes from. I don't remember the like particular like specific cultural group off the top of my head. I should, but I don't.
I will
Yeah, so she
say,
has some family from there, and
as
people,
somebody.
yeah, people
Oh,
should look up the name.
yeah. I'll say that when I got into the Netrunner, I'm multiracial Indian,
Mhm.
and
Oh, okay.
and when I first got into the game, the fact that there was all these multiracial people in the future just made me so happy because, like, yeah, of course there are, and you never see that. The cast of Star Trek: The Next Generation, they're just like all white. It's weird. Like, oh, we're post-racial, but also nobody has kids with people of other races. It's weird. It's weird. And so, like, originally,
Mm.
Netrunner made me very happy to see all these multiracial people. Then they went to India, and then there was all this Indian representation, and I was just, I just felt very, very seen by the setting. Though I think Padma is the first multiracial Indian person we've got canonically. So thank you. Mumbad's rotating. I think it's important that I specifically am never not catered to. So thanks.
Yeah, it's actually been really important to me to have to try and like preserve a lot of representation stuff. I know some people wondered why Ayla was in System Update, and it was because at the time that we were putting System Update together, we were going to be rotating or would have rotated all of the Arabic characters in the game, and I didn't want to let that happen. So I said we have to keep one of them in System Update, and I think Ayla's been around for less time than Nasir, and is probably the one that's a bit more like generically viable. Oh, that's right. Yeah, more generically viable and doesn't need us to keep other cards in order for her to work. Because like Nasir would have needed us to keep some other stuff around for him to
he,
have much of a fighting chance at
he
the
might have
time to
liked. He might have
function.
appreciated. He might
So
have
yeah,
liked
so
Tezla.
that's why we kept Ayla. I really pushed for that. But now we also have Zaya, so which is good to have two of them. It makes me happy. Um,
Sorry, I said I was
but
going to try and accelerate things, and then I went on a big monologue about
yeah,
myself.
exactly.
Apologies.
No, that's fine. So
Padma,
yeah, so
our intrepid
Padma's from
explorer.
New Elsewhere. Yeah, so she's from elsewhere. Endurance, the icebreaker ship, is actually not built to be an icebreaker. It was originally a fishing trawler, and sort of she and some of her crew, which you've met like a third of the crew, I think, because there's three watchers, and her little polycule is one of the three watchers. It's the captain's watch. And I think like some of them and some of the other crew basically like originally were fishing, and I think at some point they bought out the boat, and it got refitted a lot over the years and became got reinforced, the hull and the bow and everything, and now it operates as an icebreaking ship that it's like a one third exploration, one third research, and one third sticking it to the core. Um, and yeah, that's what they go around doing now. Yeah, the so I think like I can't remember. Well, the source like Calvin wrote the the Sable story, and uh, I can't remember. Like, I think we talked a little bit about the ship beforehand, and I mentioned like how many crew there would be, like around sort of 20-ish. And I think he must have forgotten because he wrote it like the polycule were all the crew.
That's
And it's
possible.
totally irrelevant for the story itself. Like it like totally doesn't matter for the story itself. Like it is like there was nothing wrong with it. But later when Padma's Padma and Endurance show up in some of the other stories, there will be some of the other crew. And I will say that most of like all of the watches are kind of their own sort of polycules to some degree.
Nice.
Like there is a lot of relationship connections between all of the different watches. Um, so I hope people will enjoy that kind of thing. I think it's just like a fun sort of dynamic to have that kind of thing. For people who have watched the Expanse TV series, I can't remember which season it is that starts in, but one of the characters from like earlier seasons ends up joining up with this crew of a ship, and all of the crew on the ship are in a sort of polycule of some sort, and she falls in love with several of them, and it's all entangles and just very very cool and cute, and it's a really unique dynamic, and I just really like that kind of concept. So I was like, yeah, let's just replicate it.
Yeah, I
But
love it.
yeah, Calvin's approach to writing that story was literally just like, all right, I want to do Padma, and also she's gonna be lesbian, and I was like, okay. And then later he's like, also there's a polycule, and I was like, okay. Like
Can I?
I was totally happy with it. Like with whatever he wanted to do about it. Yeah, so they're currently up in the Arctic, and they're trying to gather like information on just what the corps are doing up in the Arctic. Uh, Sort of half out of like research of is there anything that people can actually do to try and compensate for what's going on, and also partly to try and expose it all at some point, and also to go and fuck with them, which is exactly what they do a lot of the time as well. So they're up there mapping a lot of like the activity on the seafloor, all of like the cabling that's been putting in down there, um, and yeah, and then like tapping into it like you would see on say like Into the Depths has Sable has Padma tapping into an HB pipeline,
Ooh.
like
Oh,
data
it says
pipeline,
HB on it.
and that's yeah, and that's also the sort of thing that is so they're also guarded by bioroid ice that are like installed into the pipe itself, and one of them is on chest model bioroids,
Right, right.
which is what the actual bioroid the titular bioroid is working on one of those, sort of tending to one of those bioroids in there as well. Um, yeah. So yeah, like that box is hooked up to one of those underwater cables.
Oh, I hadn't made that connection. That's lovely. Um,
Hmm.
So, one thing that's coming to mind is that timing wise, we are running out of time. I think
Yeah, fair.
I anticipated that we'd have more than enough to talk about. Maybe let's just divert ourselves to the questions we got from the community just to make sure that we get
Yeah,
through
sure.
them. There was a really excellent one
Absolutely.
from Veronica on GLC, just asking
Hmm.
what she wrote was the pieces of fiction in the set were written by a bunch of different people. What was it like to work with them? Do you think there's a noticeable difference in writing style between the various writers? Do you have any pieces that you'd ever give to a single writer, or do you think they all could handle any any cool, fun stories to tell about working on these stories with them? I think Veronica was really interested in the process of working with all these different writers and was hoping you could expound on that.
Sure. So this would be like the second time that I've helped, either helped or done the sort of organizing and assigning of fiction. I manage that stuff for Ian for Gateway as well. And kind of the process for how it works is we would we would see who wants to write stuff and what factions they were most interested in doing, and then would sort of assign it based on that. I have been wanting to add more people dedicated to my team, because a lot of the people who did fiction for this and also for like Gateway are in SA but from other teams as well. In fact, we even had the whole recruitment stuff for that, and I only ended up getting editors from the recruitment push for narrative so far, which is uh, how do I put this? It is my bad, and I have been starting to reach out to people who applied for it. But basically, I want to have a more permanent roster. So the answer to some of these questions are kind of moot in a way because I sort of just kind of work with what I had, and unfortunately, because of like my new job has been so exhaustingly busy, the like getting all the story stuff together was much more rushed than I ever wanted it to be for Midnight Sun as well, which is one of the reasons that I'm so proud of everyone who did writing for us because considering how suboptimal the process was on my end. The end results were really good, and I'm just really really happy and really proud of how everything turned out. Even though I sort of dropped the ball a little bit, unfortunately, partly due to stuff out of my hands. So to like give quick answers to the actual like the direct questions is so to work with everyone, it's great. Like some of them like Calvin will have a really strong picture in their mind to begin with. Calvin's been doing professional writing stuff for all sorts of games for ages. He's a pro, and so I can generally just will bounce like some initial ideas back and forth, and then he'll just kind of go and do it, and then I get to read it, and it's great, and then it gets edited a bit. Um, some of the others, so like say Zoe and Serenity have done some stuff before, and obviously like I know Zoe really well, so we'll talk about stuff fairly often. Like Zoe will send me DMs asking about small things here and there, and I'll answer them as I can. Um, uh, let's see. Padrog, Anarcho Mushroom hadn't done any writing for us before, having joined after Gateway,
That story is
but was
fantastic.
interested and yeah, and was interested in doing the Wayland thing, and so like this is probably the one of the ones that I had the most direct involvement with, as they were really un they had a bit of writer's block basically. Like we're kind of stuck. Um, and I was like, look, let's just do a big brainstorm. Let's just talk about a bunch of ideas. Like, what were your initial ideas? How can we build on them? And uh, like one of the things I really love about working with other writers is that often they just take a little bit of little bit of prodding, a little bit of pointing in certain directions, and then everything just comes spilling out, so to speak. And that was kind of what it was like here. It was like, what was your original concept? And then they told me, and then I was like, well, you could try this, and you could do this angle, and you could include the Yakov, who is the CEO of Op. And I really like, the sort of dual narrative part, and that you have this character that is actually kind of sympathetic, that the reader gets attached to, and then they get fired at the end
Yeah.
because he's a piece of shit. Um, yeah, like that was just like a really good start, and yes, we also got to effectively put like White Blades or Eric's sort of evil twin XP into the fiction because I thought it was extremely funny, and Eric knew this and was okay with this, and also found it very amusing. But to me, like when it comes to champ cards, if they want to be, like if they want to have themselves in the card, then they need to deal with me doing stuff with that character because that is now a character in this setting, and I will do stuff with that character if I want to. So I have done that, and or will be doing that with like all of the ones that are in there. So obviously, Jago has been referenced in the MBN fiction, and Yakov was obviously in the Wayland one quite prominently. I'm sure I'll figure out something to do with Big Deal at some point, and uh, Pencil's Bioroid will probably actually no is definitely going to show up at some point. I've already got a plan for that one. Um, yeah, and then I think like the other ones, yeah, people just sort of worked on them. I looked at them and gave thumbs up or made some suggestions, and my editors went over them in much more detail because I that's what they do. They do the editing stuff. It's one of the reasons why I'm really happy that um, I was able to get two new editors, Dinepa and um, Patrick, added to the team because they've both been extraordinarily good. Like I don't think I would have managed to get everything that I wanted to get done for Midnight Sun, especially considering, like the sudden new job and very busy new job in the sort of 7 or so weeks prior to release. I wouldn't have been able to get a lot of that stuff done without their help. So that's been, really superb. Um, there's definitely a noticeable difference in writing style between them. I think that's, always going to happen. Uh, I don't know if I have a preference, and if I did, I wouldn't say so. But there are some pieces, like there are definitely certain things that I think for some of the writers I wouldn't want them to do. I can definitely think of, like, thinking back on, say, like previous IDs. There are definitely some that I would, advise I wouldn't assign to some of the writers, just because I think where they would lean or where they would take a character or a concept wouldn't go exactly like where I would want it to go necessarily.
And it
Um,
sounds like you're
yeah,
getting a really nice sense of the voices, the narrative voices, and the skill sets of
yeah,
each of your of the people you can have write stuff, and that's great. I
yeah.
guess,
But I was
um,
going to say what I
yeah.
do really want to do though is get more writers for the team and more people who can work on like the world building and theme and just flavor text and stuff with me. And I'll definitely, in the coming weeks, now that there's a bit less on my plate with Nisei stuff, I'll hopefully be reaching out to people who applied earlier in the
Are
year,
applications still?
apologizing profusely for
Yeah.
how long it's taken, and
Are
then add
applications
some more
still
people to my
open?
team.
Are applications still open, or is it getting
I
back to the
believe it
people
is.
who?
It is. They are closed, but I
Okay,
will get back to all the people who initially applied, and then I'll see where things are then as to whether I would want to reopen them or not.
makes sense.
But yeah, watch this space, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Maybe
yeah.
a nice closing out question. What card? I mean, it's going to be hard to pick one, I imagine, but what cards from the Midnight Sun do you most like from a thematic standpoint, or maybe what are you most proud of?
The twinning is like the absolutely the standout one for me that I'm most proud of, which is like the final Anarch card. So the twinning is layered. It is based on a very deep, sort of abstract, emotional, ethical, a sort of ideological concept for ESSA. And working on figuring it out was difficult. Working on the art stuff for it was challenging, and I was actually quite worried about the concept that I had for it not working out. But Adam Doyle is just fucking amazing, and like relished the challenge. Like when we sent him the brief, we sort of prefaced it with being, "This is a difficult brief, so like if you have trouble with it, do let us know, and we'll might figure something else out instead." And his response was basically like, "Yeah, this is challenging, and I relish it." And he sent us, I think, like the first drafts he sent. It was like there were like 13 different concepts, and the last one was like 29B. Like that's how many sketches he put together for this idea. And yeah, we ended up sort of whittling it down to this concept that has the twinned crystal with all the green and all the really like dense, detailed foliage, with Essa within pushing away all of this gross industrial stuff that's encroaching upon it, and it's representative of the idea that to Essa, uh, the the world and nature is inexplicably linked to the survival of humanity and vice versa, and that damaging one will lessen the other. And to fight back against that, which is, kind of what Z is doing with all of the eco-terrorism, and that's like how ardently, how fervently they believe in that. And people will see like between now and Parhelion, and also in Parhelion, to what lengths this character will go to. Like if people thought that Essa was too binary good, um, then they should definitely look forward to what is going to happen with the character, because yeah, Essa is willing to do anything and pay any price to achieve these goals. And yeah, that's sort of what this and a lot of the core damage stuff is meant to represent. The twinning is also, I think this was mentioned in another podcast. It's also a fun Final Fantasy 14
Yeah,
reference for anyone
yeah.
who can figure that out. The other card. Let me see the other. Okay, I guess I'll give you the other two top cards. So it
Sounds
would
good.
be Midnight Through Arcology and Refuge campaign as a
Yeah,
pair.
that's so good.
Um, those two are their cards that have very short text. So I looked at them and were like, this is fertile ground for me to write some longer exposition. And I did work on these two a lot. I think both of them were a little bit longer in some of my drafts to when I cut them down. Um, because they still need to be concise. I know a lot of people have made some jokes about both some of Nisei and some FFG flavor text just being too long. So it is important to ensure that every word that is there is necessary. So yeah, so they're another linked pair, much like Seamless Launch and Nico Campaign and Quetzal in uh, that in Gateway and such. Um, and then I mean like let's see. I mean Artificial Crypto Crash I just kind of love because it's very transparent in what it's doing and very funny to me because of that. um, Mavirus is really satisfying to me because it is like it's derived from Maverick virus, which is a type of seaborne virus, like a virophage that eats other viruses. So Jinteki has like weaponized, you know, a virus in NetSpace to destroy other viruses. So I thought that was kind of satisfying. The weird like little disc-like things, those are actually the shape of the uh, Mavirus like
Capsids.
organisms.
Yeah.
But I think like the other Stone Ship Chart Room is also a fun like reference one. The name is a reference to Myst, like the like early '90s adventure game that I
Sure, of
played with my
course.
dad when I was a kid. And the little like hollow table is also like a reference to one that's in Myst as well. Um, I know. Oh yeah, I do quite like. Oh yeah, Propeller. So Propeller and Hyperbaric. Um, both of these are about the concept. I'm trying to explore a little bit more about some elements of what the setting are like, including what NetSpace is like. And to me, NetSpace is this tangible representation of an abstract concept. And when you are representing something like that in a tangible way through, you know, code, quite literally, and an energy, it is extremely malleable. And a lot of runners tend to like the way that they overcome problems, get through ice, get into servers, is almost like working within the environment that the corporations set up. Like you'll see Sundog in Under Northern Skies, the Borealis announcement fiction. He functions like that. He goes through Wayland's corridors, but he, takes out their, ice as he encounters it. But Padma, she would just, if she came into that same theme, she would twist the net space itself and flood it, and then sail through it with like a digital version of endurance. And so the flavor text on Propeller, um, within net space, tangible space could be manipulated as desired. So if like a skilled enough user could turn all of the like net space, quote unquote, air into water, and then Propeller applies fluid dynamics to whatever the ice is and just destroys it, like rips it apart, because people don't really design ice to deal with that kind of changing of its tangible situation. And in hyperbaric is the same, where Padma gets into the little hyperbaric, the little submersible, and then just applies enormous amounts of pressure to like that region in net space through manipulation of the code. And this is where it all gets very sort of matrix like, where like all of the really powerful entities within the matrix in the films were able to twist the code of the matrix in whatever way they wanted to, and that allowed them to create things out of nothing, open doors from nowhere, or to fly, or whatever. Um, yeah, so yeah, alter the fabric of negative space to be like water and then apply pressure. Yeah, exactly. Like you've got. Yeah, I think I told you about this
Yeah,
before.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so
I
that's like
I
the
had my
whole
inside scoop
concept
there.
there. Yeah, so like to me, like yeah, Padma's way of running is like she goes swimming or diving. Um, she will like just to her net space is like water, and it will always be kind of like that. So yeah, I had a lot of fun like doing all of that stuff as well.
I
Yeah,
think
obviously I had fun with like all of the criminal theme stuff. There's all of the embroidery and thread related things for Sable, with like back stitching. I think it was Ginevra who wrote the flavor text for back stitching, because they actually do embroidery like IRL, and wrote the flavor text for back stitching, which I absolutely love. Um, and so like Cat's Cradle also has like the thread concept. Pinhole threading does as well. Um, that kind of thing. Um, yeah, so I've sort of been trying to explore not just like what the programs or virtual resources are, but also how they work and how is it that they do what they do. And that's sort of like, like Cat's Cradle is also a really cool visual metaphor for that, of, all of this thread just like grabbing and pulling and tying down the code gate that that she's encountering, and just is able to like twist and turn and follow the threads, as she wills to find a way through the ice, trying to keep her out. And like pinhole threading as well, being the idea of just fitting a lot through a very small space.
yeah.
Um, that kind of thing.
I think the
Yeah, I mean, I
um
could talk about a lot more as
I
well.
know, I know. I think we're over time, and I would say two things. One,
There we are.
I'd love to have you back on to do more of these. And also, I don't
Yeah,
know if you're down for it, but if you're making Netrunner content, reach out to Morgan, and Morgan can tell you good stuff. Probably, like I don't know if I don't want to offer your time. That's your time, but yeah, Netrunner content creators, do what I did and ask Morgan if they're willing to come be interviewed, because it's been a delight. Um, Thank you for being so generous with um, your insights on this beautiful, beautiful set. It's
absolutely. I'm always happy to talk about stuff. Like my general attitude is that I I will answer any question that people ask if I already have answer to it. But if I don't, then it's up to player interpretation intentionally, because I don't want to spell out everything for players, because I think a lot of this kind of game's narrative and storytelling is best when players are able to do their own interpretation as well. And that's why I want the cards to be able to tell a story that doesn't need the fiction, the short stories to tell it, because I want people to be able to get enough of a gist of the characters and the setting and the narrative storyline from the cards to then build their own interpretations and understandings. Um, So yeah, like there are definitely questions that people could ask me about Midnight Sun, and I'll just be like, I don't know, what do you think? Because it's not something that I'd thought about or decided upon or thought was important beforehand. Um, Yeah, but yeah, I'm always happy. Like if people ask me about things and I can answer it, I will always be happy to do it. Sometimes I might, try and lead the horse to water a little bit more than giving the answer straight up. Depends on what people want. If people just want me to explain it to them, I will. But I will sometimes just ask pointed questions and try and encourage people to think about it and figure it out on their own a bit. Uh, yeah, but I know I'm always happy to talk about it, be it, on a podcast or a video or anything like that, or a stream, or just on Slack or Discord or Twitter, even Reddit maybe, wherever. Yeah, I'm always more than happy to chat about stuff.
Yeah, we did miss a few
So
very
to
good
that end, thanks for having me
Yeah,
on.
yeah, absolutely. We did. If you want to head to Reddit, we did miss some very good questions that Phil Zeroth Maxima
Oh, sure.
asked about Jinteki
I'll,
uh, uh, creatures. So maybe, yeah,
yeah,
go help Phil
I'll
out.
go. I'll go
All
have a
right.
look.
So audience, thank you for joining me for our narrative interview. We're gonna follow up right after with our interview with Ruben and Jamie from the Rules team.
Hmm.
So just give me a second to get them set up, and we will be ready for that interview. Thank you again, Morgan. I really enjoyed this.
Absolutely, and same here. And again, thank you very much for organizing this and putting me on. Had a really good time.
Great. Hello again, everybody. How's it going? Um, I hope you enjoyed our narrative interview, and we are going to continue on with our rules team. Again, you won't be seeing my beautiful face in a few moments because my poor little computer would crash if we had the full weight of rules and me at the same time. But I don't think we have any further ados to ado, so without further ado, let's introduce our guests. We have um, Ruben, one member of the rules team. Thank you for joining us. Hello.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
And we are also joined by the rules. Oh, sorry, one second. Let me pull out my notes. The rules lead? No, that's not your title. I apologize. The rules
Rules
manager.
manager.
Yes. Our rules manager, Jamie. Jamie Perconti.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you both on here. I think I think you were watching the Morgan interview, and I think one thing that unfortunately happened is that we had way too much to talk about, and so we ran out of time. I expect we'll also have way too much to talk about and run out of time. But I'm very glad to have you both on here to talk about uh, Midnight Sun. But before we get into that, I would love to just ask a few questions about who you are, what got you into Netrunner, how did you get involved in Project Nisei. Ruben, would you lead us off?
Yeah, so I got into the game, I guess I would say relatively recently, so around 4 years ago, when a friend bought the revised core set, and then we would like play with the revised core set for a bit. Um, then of course, yeah, there was the announcement that FFG stopped supporting the game, but shortly after that, Nisei picked stuff up. Um, I think then I started getting a little bit more into the general Netrunner community, like the Belgian players. So also shout out to them because it's a lot of fun playing with them. Um, yeah, and when I got into Nisei around, I think 2 years ago, when um, I applied for the an open rules position. I'm sort of very interested in game rules and things related to that. So I made an application, was accepted, and now I'm here. So yeah.
Yeah, I think you're being interviewed by a big fan of comprehensive rules of the comprehensive rules. So I get it. That's wonderful. Jamie, tell me about what brought you into the game and how you came to Project Nisei.
Yeah, so uh, I heard about Netrunner, when when FFG first released it, and in those early days, in like 2012, early 2013, it would continually like go out of stock. So it was just kind of on my radar, and then I finally actually got myself a copy right before the plugged-in tour came through town. So when the plugged-in tour came to my local game store at Pandemonium, uh, I didn't play in the tournament. I had like just gotten my first core set, and uh, I showed up with just the core set pre-constructed decks and sort of looked for pickup games, and I got to die to some card that wasn't out yet because Damon Stone and somebody else. Was it Stewart? Or I didn't know Stewart yet at the time, so I don't remember. It was somebody else. But some FFG folks were gunslinging, showing off like Shock and Punitive Counter Strike and stuff that had not yet been released. Um, and I pretty quickly got into the community, the local community playing at Pandemonium. Um, and because I was already friends with the events manager there, when we started doing like a weekly tournament, I ended up like being the judge for it right away, even though I had only just started playing. Um, year or two later, I got invited to join a playtest group. I did playtesting off and on uh, for FFG for like most of the rest of the cycles that they produced from Sansan onward. And then starting when the Mumbot cycle was releasing, I got involved with the Anchor project doing the unofficial FAQs um, with set releases. And then from there, time passed, and eventually Nisei happened, and I joined in right at the beginning, and uh, my whole project for many years now has just been trying to get the game into a coherent and consistent state where, like, you don't have to rely on lots of fiat Twitter rulings and finding all these obscure things. We just have a system that makes sense. And the last few years, having actual control of the rules, being able to write the comprehensive rules instead of just trying to talk the FFG devs into doing something sensible. um, it's been really great, and trying to execute that whole project without um, being too disruptive, making like changes that are too drastic all at once, has been uh, you know slow and difficult and involved, but it's also been very rewarding, and I'm just really happy with all the progress that we've made.
That's wonderful. Ruben, could you comment a little bit more about how you grew from, a new player who's just starting to learn the rules to where you're um, knowing the rules really well to the point that you're like, hey, I want to work on the rules because I have that knowledge.
Yeah, so like I've always been interested in like in games or even in like hobby projects and in the game rules, like how things interact, how corner cases interact. So um like I'm always sort of interested in studying these things and reading up on things. So when I started playing Netrunner, um or well, I guess a bit later when I started sort of seeing what the comprehensive rules was, what the document is about, and things like that. Um, I I sort of yeah, I guess the main thing why I sort of wanted to apply is because I wanted to contribute and then contribute to continuing Netrunner. And I felt like this open position was there, where I have a big interest in, and I just wanted to try and apply and see what happens. So, I, yeah, I don't know if that answers the questions. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
no, absolutely, and it shares a little bit more about your spirit of volunteerism, and I'm glad that you're doing what you're doing. Um, Now, I did have some questions. Before we get into specific Midnight Sun mechanics, since we just had a new set drop, I'm very new to Nisei, so there's a lot of the process that I don't really understand. I was hoping to ask a little bit about sort of how the rules team intervenes on in the development of a set. They're coming up with the designs, they're coming up with the lore, they're coming up with the numbers that are going to be
Yeah,
on the cards. um Jamie, do you want to start talking about how
sure.
how does this where do y'all, and actually, this doesn't have to specifically be Jamie, maybe the two of you can comment on like where were you when it's first like, hey, we're doing Borealis, we're doing Midnight Sun? Like, when did the rules team get involved? When did they tell you that you had to um, think about super heavy logistics, et cetera, et cetera?
Oh boy. um, I I remember well over a year ago, I saw Ob for the first time, and my reaction was, "Can we please not do this?" It's a very nuanced effect, and writing it in such a way that you can answer all the questions that we're going to be talking about later was challenging. I'm happy with where we ended up, though. I think it's a really interesting identity for gameplay, and I'm excited to do some building with it in the near future. But more generally, we uh, we 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 formally kind of get the last pass over the mechanics of the cards. Like, we write the final text um, that you see on the set as it's printed. We do a lot of consulting at that stage with the development team to make sure, okay, is it intended that this particular interaction works this way, or is this just a quirk of the language that y'all happen to write? Uh, is is it okay if we make this tweak so that things are more clear and we sort of eliminate this problem, corner case, weirdness? Um, and there's some back and forth on that, but it we also like to be involved throughout the process up to that point. Like, we want to talk about the mechanics as a whole, and what the potential issues are that might come up in terms of rules and complexity and weird interactions uh, from the beginning of the design process. And you know, as Nisei has grown and learned and refined our processes, uh, we're getting better at that every set. Um, so I am particularly excited to dig into Bell Tower in the near future, which is the set after Borealis, which is currently like midway through playtesting, and has some really exciting stuff going on, but we haven't had a chance yet to like dive in and look closely and be like, okay, let's talk about these particular cards that are doing something new or weird or whatever. Uh, those are going to be some fun conversations, and we hopefully have those conversations earlier and earlier until we hit a point that it's really smooth. And like, what we don't want to happen is for rules problems to get noticed after playtesting ends. That just creates problems for the production schedule, and t- yeah. Um,
It sounds like as the rules team, you all have to be balancing sort of looking at the future sets, but also things are the as the set gets introduced to the public, questions come up. Some questions you've anticipated, some questions you didn't anticipate, some questions you anticipated but didn't think anyone would be asking. Ruben, how do you sort of balance, I guess, juggling all those things at once? Like, what is it to be like to be on the rules team?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, I think typically we have to like prioritize things. So if, like, for example, for Midnight Sun, we want to prioritize getting the comprehensive rules out, which we managed to do. So when the set actually on the day of the set release, so we also like set out to, okay, we're gonna prioritize this to make to actually try and get it out on that day. Um, when things are more quiet, I guess, so when we're not actively working on the newest set, we um, just try to consider on yeah, I guess also prioritize, like, so there's several active projects that we balance. So we also have the core text updates. We have indeed like a sort of backlog of things that we sort of want to tackle.
we have a
That
whole Trello board full of topics and projects and issues that we want to uh, improve something either with card text updates or in the CTU.
And so
There's a lot of stuff.
one of them that actually made it into CR 1.6 is sort of clarification that the agenda abilities are explicitly controlled by the corp, which was not explicitly clear in the comprehensive rules, and which made effects like send a message, um, or more corner cases with SSL and stuff like that. Kind of
Oh,
weird.
yeah. So it might be ambiguous. Oh, yeah. I think I read that and I didn't quite understand it. So you're saying, you're clarifying that if the runner steals something and they steal, for example, send a message, that's still the corp's ability to
Yeah.
resonize.
So yeah, the ability is controlled by the corp, so the corp will resolve the effect, and it's not the runner that is resolving the effects on the agenda. Yeah.
So you're saying if I wanted to go to a tournament and be a pain, and say, oh, actually, I get to pick which ice you res, I missed my chance.
Yeah.
All right, good to know.
I think
Um,
I think that case was okay. What was the issue that sparked us wanting to make that fix was SSL endorsement, which is less relevant since it's banned in standard. But when it was heavily played in standard, there was the question of like, okay, well, what if there's a bunch of stuff happening at the start of the turn? uh, whose ability actually is this, and what order does it go in? Because the active player resolves all of their abilities for a particular trigger condition first, and then the inactive player resolves theirs. So, which player technically has control of the SSL endorsement ability, regardless
ah,
of like, we know it's the corp that's getting the credits.
right.
No one was trying to dispute that, but like, when exactly do they do it?
Oh, that
is
makes sense.
is something that could be unclear prior to this rules change.
Nice. Um, yeah, that makes sense. All right, I think let's dive into Midnight Sun. Is there anything else y'all wanted to add about just general rules stuff, rules team dynamics that I might want to know? Or shall we dive into Midnight Sun?
Yeah, that sounds
Great
good.
team. I love them all. We work really well together, and I'm really happy with the stuff we're able to do.
Nice.
Yeah.
Um,
Shout out to Justin and Kaylee, our other two main rules team members.
yeah, and one thing I'll say is that whether we started on time or not, I love rules stuff, and I don't think we're gonna get to everything we might want to talk to. So let's have more rules interviews. I love talking about rules, sincerely. Um, but let's talk about sabotage. Um, so I think I was gonna go through the main set mechanics. Just figure we could go through. I know you all are preparing. Actually, when is the FAQ? Sorry to put you on the spot, but I imagine the FAQ is coming out soonish. Is that right?
As soon as we write
Okay,
it.
cool, cool, cool. I know you're in the process of
we,
working on it.
yeah, we've been collecting questions throughout uh, preview season. We've got a whole long list, and we've got to organize them and you know clean them up and write the answers. And we are not going to be doing a separate release notes document this time around. Um, we're just going to be putting the rulings directly on NetrunnerDB, and we'll of course share a link where you can just read the rulings for all the cards in the set on one page if you want to. But we felt like that was the most useful and least sort of overhead way to get that information out there to the players. But in the meanwhile, we can answer some of those questions here.
Yeah, I will say that I know when I'm judging, I always like having somebody to as a backup in case I'm not sure. So it was one of the. I mean, I know that you all are both very good at rules, but I just am happy that you're here together to support each other. Because I think I put together these questions. A lot of them are borrowed from you all, but I put these questions together sooner or more recently than I would have liked to give you, a chance to really look over them. So yeah, feel free to say that you're not sure. It's okay. Um, Ruben, would you like to take our sabotage questions? These are the four sabotage questions I thought of. Do you have them available? I can read them.
I
Yeah,
can. Should I read them out loud?
yeah. Do you want to read them out loud and tell the folks about sabotage?
Yeah. Okay. So we have the new anarchy word, sabotage. So the first question is, can I look at the cards on the top of R&D before deciding if I want to trash them? So the answer to that is no. So you cannot just out of the blue look at the top cards of R&D. But what you also cannot do is, let's say that we have Sabotage 4 from Shastushka, for example. You cannot trash the first top card of R&D and then look at it because it's face down on your archives and then like, oh, it's an agenda, so I'm gonna trash cards from HQ. You can also not do that. So you need to decide upfront how many cards you want to trash from the top of R&D and from HQ, and then you will trash them all at the same time. So you'll from R&D you will never know beforehand which cards you're trashing.
Oh, that's an even better question that I didn't anticipate. The idea that it all is happening at the same time. What if I don't have enough cards in HQ? Do I not have to trash things? Can I say I'm going to trash from HQ, but actually I don't have anything in HQ, so I'm not going to trash anything?
No, so if you have no cards in HQ, then basically you're forced to trash all of the cards of the top of R&D.
What?
And likewise, if you don't have enough cards in R&D, you'd have to trash everything from HQ. Well, or as much as you need to for the sabotage effect.
What if I don't have enough cards in either HQ and R&D?
Yeah, if you don't have, so
Good luck with the
then you
rest of the
basically,
game.
yeah, basically. So you have to trash everything, and it's very unlikely that you are able to win the game after that because then you have to draw from an empty R&D, unless you have like Spin Doctor, I guess, or something.
Yeah, hopefully an already res spin doctor. Um, nice.
Yeah,
Um,
because if you res it, then you still lose. Yeah.
nice. Any other things on your mind for sabotage, Jamie or Ruben?
Uh, just to give a little bit more specific example. So let's
Yeah.
say you have two cards in HQ and you get hit with Chasushka and you have to sabotage four. So you can trash both of your cards and then trash two off the top of R&D. You can trash one card from your hand and three off the top of R&D, or you can keep both cards of your hands in HQ and trash four off the top of R&D. So you can only assign as many of the trashes to a particular server as there are actual cards there.
That makes sense. Out of curiosity, I don't think there's anything in the game that cares about the order in which things fall into to archives. But what order do cards,
It is
sabotage cards?
explicitly not ordered in the rules. Archives is an unordered zone.
Love it, love it, love it. Take that, that one Crim ID from Draft. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry. Um, Anarch. Oh yeah, yeah, that
The,
makes sense.
under FFG, the heap, the runner's discard pile, was an ordered zone, and that's silly, because it just makes in a game like Netrunner with lots of recursion and wanting to sort of sort and manipulate your cards in the heap, it's it's just not the design space that you gain from like caring about what's on top is just not worth the hassle to the players of having uh, to keep everything in order. So unless you're playing as that one ID from the one draft set that does care about the top, uh, under the CR, the both players' discard piles are now unordered.
Fair, fair, fair. And I guess if like something triggered on like entering archives, they would all come into archives together. I mean, this is silly because there's not a card that does that, but just curious.
Well, there's some cards that do that on the runner side. There's Buffer Drive, there's Steelskin Starring,
Right, right, right. Oh, true, true, true. Hmm. Good
there's
point.
Scorpios actually is a big one.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, interesting that none of them are on that. Like, do care about things going into archives. Convenient, maybe even. Maybe we'll have to worry about that someday, but not today. Anyway,
We'll see what Jinteki gets up to in the future. They've been caring a lot lately
right?
about face down cards and
Yeah,
archives.
yeah,
So
that's true.
who knows? Who knows
Yeah,
what June and the design team are up to?
it does not seem like the primary goal of the design team or the development team is to make your job easy. Um, let's talk about Mark. Um, so I think a few questions I saw about Mark mainly had to do with how you deal with multiple mark cards, or like if you install a mark card but you don't have a mark yet, what happens? And then there was a more niche one that I saw on your rules Discord. This third one. Yeah, would you two like to tackle these? Talk to me about Mark.
You want me to go? You want Ruben to go?
Ruben, do you want to start us off on Mark?
Jamie, go ahead.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so you only ever have one mark. So if something tells you to identify your mark and you don't have one, you pick one. You can use the three central server randomization cards that come in Midnight Sun. You can roll a die. Just make sure it's clear between you and your opponent what the result of the die roll is supposed to mean. Um, but if you already have a mark and something tells you to identify your mark, you identify, yes, it's still that one. So everything shares the same mark. If all of your cards that care about mark get trashed, and then later the same turn you play another one, it's still the same mark. It doesn't go away just because there are no cards that care about it. It goes away at the end of the turn. If I install a card that says when your turn begins, identify your mark, and I don't have a mark already, do I get a mark? No. So if you're installing a card that cares about mark, it's not going to turn on until your next turn, unless something else has already given you a mark that turn, or if you play Carpe Diem, that's the one way in the set to get a mark in the middle of the turn. And the third question here, if I have a successful run on a server that later becomes my mark, can I run it for mark effects? And the answer to that is yes. So make a successful run on your mark is not like a variable that gets instantiated. Like it doesn't, the ability doesn't turn into when you make a successful run on HQ because HQ is your mark. It's looking for when you make a run on the server that is designated as the mark. So you can run HQ, play Carpe Diem, or I guess Carpe Diem doesn't actually care. So you can spend your turn going run HQ, install backstitching, play Carpe Diem to run HQ again because that's what you randomly pick as your mark, and then no, that's also not a good example because backstitching isn't a first time trigger. Somebody help me out. What card do I want here?
Virtuoso? I think Virtuoso does it, right? Hear me
Yeah,
out.
there we
Yeah.
go. So you spend your turn going. If there were a program that cared about mark, we'd have an easy example because we could. You could play mutual favor and have a reason to do that.
Oh,
But
yeah.
anyway,
Good point.
we don't happen to have one. Um, I'm not teasing. I don't actually remember offhand whether there's a program that cares about mark in Parhelion or not. um, but yeah, supposing for whatever reason you run HQ first click, you're not playing as Sable, you don't have a mark yet. Second click, you install Virtuoso, maybe because you drew it off of Jailbreak. There we go. You jailbreak HQ, you top deck Virtuoso. Second click, you install the Virtuoso. Third click, you play Carpe Diem. It selects HQ. So you use it to run HQ again. and you still get your Virtuoso trigger. So you'll get to access an additional card when you breach HQ.
Nice. Um, would it be okay if we move on to charge? I don't think we have a lot on charge, but Ruben, would you
Sorry, I
like?
didn't catch that.
Oh, is it okay if we go on to charge? Um,
Yeah.
Ruben, do you want to tell us about charge? I have some small questions about it, but I think they're a little self-explanatory, except for the second one, which is just more of a aesthetic one. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the charge keyword, the shaper keyword. So the first question is, can I charge a card without a power counter on it? So the answer to that is no. So you want, well, you cannot charge such a card, so you also won't gain a power counter on it, obviously. Then the second question is, why does rigging up say if able? This one I'm not entirely like I remember that we like this the rigging up is sort of the odd one out of the charge cards, because all of the other ones you are able to choose which card you want to charge, and you can only charge a card with already a power counter on it to charge it. And rigging up installs a program on hardware, and then you're sort of forced to charge that card, but only like that will only really work if it actually has a power counter. So if the on install effect on the card places a power counter on it. So the if able sort of clarifies that interaction of, if you're installing something else with it, nothing will really happen, and if you install something like Atma, no, I guess what's
Maybe,
the
yeah.
hyperbaric, yeah, then you will be able to charge it.
That makes sense. So there's
Um,
nothing else that has you charge a card that pick a card to charge that might not have a power counter on it.
Yeah, so just to clarify, Ruben said forced at some point in there, and uh, you do get the option. You don't have to charge the card that you install with rigging up because it says you may. Um, and I think the reason people were asking about the if able is because it has both of those. Um, but the if able is just there to remind you, hey, you do actually have to meet the condition in order to resolve this part of the effect.
Cool. I think.
Um,
All
it's
right.
important to note that the you may charge is a separate sentence. It's a different instruction from the actual install, which means that you do have the opportunity in between those two instructions to resolve when you install abilities on the card, which typically will be things like when you install this card, put however many power counters on it, and that's the only way you could ever be able to charge something you install with rigging up is if you get a trigger like that to kick it off.
That makes sense. I think I have some timing questions involved with the next set mechanic, or not really a set, not a named mechanic, but one of the other IDs, and then we're going to get into OB. Almost all the questions are about
Big
OB.
boy.
But before that, let's just talk a little bit about Bravdivos Consulting and timing. Who's up?
Certainly.
Jamie, do you want to start talking about Pravdivos and some questions people might have about Pravdivos?
Yeah. So the important things to remember about Proudvost is uh, you have a res window and a paidability window after the runner's last chance to jack out, but you don't have any more opportunities to res or use paid abilities once you hit the successful run trigger. So you get to do your setup stuff, and then you get your Promptivos trigger, and then we go straight into the breach. Uh, so let's look at these specific questions. Can I put an extra counter on my Chekis Scions who take additional tag? Yes. So that successful run, give you an advancement counter, is before the breach starts. So by the time they access uh, the Chekis Scion, that counter will be there. and it will be counted for Chekascion's ability that gives tags. Can I jack out after the corp places their Prodivos counter? No. You have to jack out after the last piece of ice, and then uh, just like other approach server triggers and successful run triggers, you've already passed that opportunity. You've committed to making the successful run on the server. And then can I put a counter on NGO and then trash it for credits when you run my NGO? Uh, Not if this is all happening in the same run, because once you hit successful run, you're past the last window to res or use the paid ability on NGO. So if you wait for the Prodivos counter, it's too late to fire it in that run. So if that's the server that the runner is breaching, they're gonna get to trash your NGO.
Makes sense. Cool. Oh, I should also mention in the chat if our discussion brings up questions for you, please ask them. And also, Rajat's sorry for the late reply. Hello. I'm glad you're here. Um, all right. Are we ready for the single card
Let's
that
do
I
it.
assume doubled all the work that you have to do for this set? Um, so I have
All the work for the set, just for the rulings part.
I have created this. So we have Ob Super Heavy Logistics. The rules text of it says, whenever you trash a res card, except during installation, you may search R&D for one card with a printed res cost exactly one less than the trash card's printed res cost. Install and res the card you found, ignoring credit costs. Use this ability only once per turn. And I have divided us into 4 sections here. We have our Ob Light Logistics, our Ob Medium Logistics, our Ob Heavy Logistics, and our Ob Super Heavy Logistics. Um, let's start off light. Ruben, can you? I have seen these. I have seen people ask these questions. Ruben, can you set people straight on these?
Yeah. Okay, so the first question in the light logistics is, can I use up twice in one turn? So the answer to that is no. At the end of the ability, we have use this ability only once per turn. So um, I do want to clarify so that it says at the beginning of the ability, whenever you trash a rest card. So you can basically trash a card in due to an effect and then not choose to not use it and then later on choose to use it. So you don't have to do it the first time, but you can only do it once per turn, basically.
And if you do the search, that counts as using it. If you
Yeah.
fail to find, you can't then say, "Oh well, I didn't get the thing, and I'm going to use it again later in the turn." That the search counts as using the ability.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Makes sense.
So yeah. The next question, if I install a card and trash other cards with that installation, does that trigger up? So the answer is no. So we have the except during installation part of the up ability. That's there to make this exception basically. So if you trash another card during an installation, then you cannot use up.
Nice. I guess this is also a light question. Can I use on my turn and then also on the runner's turn and then on my turn again? So I'm doing like, once on
Yeah.
my turn,
So it
once on their
doesn't
turn.
say anywhere in the ability during your turn. So you can use it both in your turn and in the runner's turn.
Nice. All right. All right. Those are some nice light logistics. Moving on to medium logistics. I was thinking these are also things that are on the card, but like just a little bit weirder. Um, Jamie, you want to take these?
Sure. So, do res costs modifiers affect what you can do with ob? No, they do not. It specifies that you're looking at the printed res costs both for the card that you're trashing and for the card that you're searching for. So modifiers are not affected by or do not affect ob's ability. You're looking at the number printed on the card. If a card has additional cost to res, do I have to pay them? Can I decline to pay them? If I do, can I still install the card? How do we know that we're following those rules? So Ob says ignoring credit costs. So that means any costs that apply to the install and res that are in credits, you get to ignore. So the big ones are Archer and Corporate Town, uh, which have an additional cost that is not in credits. It's forfeit an agenda to res. So you do have to forfeit an agenda if you want to res Archer when you install it with Ob. But if something has an additional cost, you are allowed to decline that additional cost and thereby not do the thing. So if you want to install an Archer but not res it because you don't want to forfeit an agenda, you can do that. If you do that, you have to reveal the Archer so that the runner can see, yes, you got a card with the right res cost and you were not able to uh, res it uh, without paying the additional costs, which you did not want to pay. Did I get all the pieces of that?
Yeah, I think
You want
so. Yeah, I
to
think
have any follow-up questions on that?
no, I think that was clear. Um,
I think maybe so. If you install an Archer and you have an agenda to forfeit, or I guess no, I guess
Yeah,
that
you
was
are
on.
not forced to forfeit an
Yeah.
agenda. Here's Ruben. I'll put you on the spot here. Do you happen to know offhand if something has an additional cost in credits? So OBS install and res will let you ignore that cost, but can you still decline to pay that cost if for some reason you want to? I
Mm,
don't actually know the answer to this. It just occurred to me now. I would have to double check the cost rules.
yeah, that's something I'd have to look up. I guess if the cost is still there, but the additional cost is still there, but it's zero, you could do that. But if the additional cost was somehow completely gone, then you wouldn't be able to do that. But I don't know
Well,
which is.
ignoring a cost makes it zero.
So
So
if
I think
it's,
that's our answer.
yeah,
nice.
Yeah. So if there's an additional cost, you can say I don't want to res. But if it's just the install and res costs, and this is also getting to Seabass's question in the chat, if it's just the install and res costs that you're ignoring, you cannot decline those. Those are costs that you have to pay or pay zero because you're ignoring what the actual cost is. It's only additional costs that give you the option to decline and thereby not do the thing.
Nice. Does the Spin Doctor ability trigger Ob? Looks kind of like trashing a card. A little bit.
It is not trashing the card. Removing from the game is not the same as trashing. So, uh, Ob can trigger Spin Doctor if you install and res it, give you cards immediately, but Spin Doctor firing does not meet Ob's trigger condition.
Nice. Okay. Oh, Ruben?
sorry.
Oh, were you gonna say? Oh, sorry. Nothing. All right. Are we ready to move on to Ob heavy logistics?
Yep.
It's
All
getting
right.
heavier.
All right. Okay. So imagine I'm so smart. I'm a clever corp, and I've got an Alexa Belsky in the remote server. And the runner runs the Alexa Belsky, and I'm gonna trash. Do I have a? Can I do this cool trick where I trash Alexa Belsky, trigger Ob, and go get a snare, but they're still in this server, so then they have to stay in and hit the snare. Can I do that?
Yeah. So um, in the run timing, so we have a point where the runner can check out, and then after that we have a paid ability window, so you can use the Alexa Belsky ability to get your snare, and then the runner will be, unless I guess they have like a flip switch or something like that, they will be accessing your snare and facing the consequences.
Hilarious. Um, okay, but here's another question. Actually, related to that, if I trash the Alexa Belsky and that's the only thing in the server stops existing for a second, right? Is that a problem? like for the run to continue if I go like get a snare and put it in the server right away?
There's nothing in. So if there's nothing protecting the server, you can't actually
That might.
put it in the server because it doesn't exist anymore, I think.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah. So
This might be more
when
super
there
heavy.
are no
Sorry.
cards, what?
This might be more super heavy than heavy, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, I think this is a bit this is super heavy question,
Okay,
but
well, yeah, we can get
okay.
into that
So
later.
the technical uh, timing here is that if there are no cards in the root of or protecting a server, and nothing in the process of being installed to that server, it ceases to exist at the next checkpoint. So now, when you trigger Alexa's ability, you pay the cost, which is trashing Alexa, and then there's a checkpoint before you resolve the ability itself. And actually, that's the same checkpoint that will spawn the reaction window where Ob's ability triggers. So the server has already ceased to exist before you even start resolving Ob's ability. So by the time you search and get the card with Ob's ability, you can't install it to the same server because there's no attack server anymore.
Nice.
Um, con- and then as far as what happens for the run, you finish out the paid ability window, and then the run ends. And if it hasn't been declared successful or unsuccessful yet, it's neither. So
Neat.
in this case, you would get your install in res, which would have to be on some other server. You would shuffle HQ into R&D, uh, subject to if the runner wants to pay to make you keep cards, and then any other paid abilities that either player wants to fire, uh, and then the run would end.
Neat. Cool. So some other heavy logistics questions. And we can get. I guess I think we'll get more into this and the other stuff about that in super heavy. But can I? If we were talking about zero cost trashables, can I just trash my NGO front and be like, oh, I'm gonna go find a -1 install cost card, and then I won't. I can't. But just because I want to shuffle R&D for some reason.
Yeah. So you can indeed do that. And I guess the reason why this is a question is because we have the no change in game state rule, where normally you cannot use an ability if it wouldn't have an effect on the game state. But here, shuffling R&D still is an effect on well, a change in the game state. So you can choose to use Ops ability and shuffle R&D and fail to find a -1 install card, even though like those don't exist.
And you can do that even if you are searching for a number that does exist.
Sure.
Whether or not you have that number in your deck, you can always fail to find on a search.
Um, Similar question, I guess. Similar question to the, but maybe a little less weird. Let's say I have, say, a envelopment or a special offer or something, and that's the only ice in the server, and I trash it to go find something and install it in that server. I guess actually this changes the answer, right? Because the server might stop existing, right? Is that right? Anyway, sorry. If I trash the last ice in a server during a run and install with Ob in that same server, can the runner jack out first of all? I think this is a poorly worded question, given that the server
It's okay.
disappears for a second,
Ruben,
huh?
you got this? You want me to take this?
I'm trying to see. Well, I guess if you have an answer
Yeah.
ready, trying to
Okay, so
understand it.
there are two different cases here, right? The case where the server ceases to exist because all that there was that ice that you trashed. Uh, it usually doesn't matter. Uh, technically, the runner will not get an opportunity to jack out, so you won't get you won't be able to get au revoir triggers if for some reason you're playing an eternal au revoir deck. But it doesn't matter because the run's just going to end and be neither successful nor unsuccessful. If there is still a card in the server, uh, when you trash the last ice, what happens is the runner gets sent to the movement phase. So they will pass the position that ice was in, and then their normal opportunity to jack out before they approach the server itself still happens. So yes, if you cannot trash ice to do the install a snare trick during encounters and approaches with that ice, you have to do it after the runner approaches the server. Or not, so, excuse me, that's not correct. You have to do it in that last res window before the runner approaches the server, after their chance to jack out after the last piece of ice. And that step is still there if that ice gets trashed uh, and ob happens, just the same as if it got trashed by a hippo or derezzed or something else happened to it. We jump to the movement phase
Yeah, I
and
will
we
just.
follow the normal steps.
I did just want to mention I put up this like graphic representation of the run timing. If you ever want like the nitty gritty of the run timing, it's in the comprehensive rules under run, so you can like get the full steps. I
Yep.
think that's what this
Section
is.
6.9 has all the steps.
So
Probably
that's
want
what
to click
this
on
is. Yeah,
6.9.
that's what this is derived from. So just in case you're
Yeah.
wondering where
And
this
then
is
there's an
from.
abbreviated version way at the end in section 11,
Oh, nice.
which is probably pretty similar to that chart. It's not as colorful, and I haven't like compared them in detail. I don't remember who made that chart. I've seen it before, but it's not from the rules team.
I guess
But
when
yeah,
people talk about a timing step and they'll say 4E, they mean from this chart.
yes.
Makes sense.
And all of the numbers in that chart are the same as the end of the number in the main body of the rules. So like step 4E in the section 11 chart or on this chart is just step 6.9.4E in the full version.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just
So
I think one of the
there should
things.
not be ambiguity about those steps.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the things about the comprehensive rules is that the answer is almost always there. Just so I think like the run timing, the install timing, the but anyway, it's good things to look at. Should we talk about ob super heavy logistics? So I just came up with
Ready.
whatever mind-bending questions I could find. Some of them, borrowed from your like rules little Discord. But just these are just the weirdest things I could find. If the two of you as a team would like to tackle all of this, um,
I feel ready.
yeah.
Ruben, do you feel ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, so here's my ob super heavy logistics questions. I'll let y'all set the pace for this one, and I'll try and pull up, cards onto the screen as necessary
Yeah.
for visualization.
Should we take turns?
Yeah, sure.
I think. Did I end up tackling the last question? I don't remember now.
Yeah, Ruben, do you wanna
Okay,
take the
I'll
first
start
question?
off.
Alright.
Yeah. So the first super heavy question is: if I trash a card to score ASF protocol, can I use the up installation to install an asset in the same server as ASF protocol? If I do, what happens? So here, I guess the same sort of case distinction is relevant, where if you trash, if there was one card, like one upgrade. No, actually, never mind.
From here out, we should assume that we are not in a situation where the server ceases to exist, because
I
all
guess
of the
that
questions about trashing the last card in the server
the same.
should have the same answer.
Okay, so
And you can't trash as if to itself, so we
Oh.
definitely can't be in that case in this situation.
Oh, I've never thought of trashing as of to itself. That's brilliant. It does say
yeah,
Well,
other
you can.
installed
It says
card.
one of your other installed cards.
we it used to say, I think, trash one of your cards, and then we made it so it actually says another one of your cards, I
It's
think.
good that you did.
But anyway,
It,
so um So
to prevent exactly the kind of confusion that we're about to describe.
so if you have a so you're I have to reread the question now. So you trash a card to score as of protocol, and then you use op to install a card in that same server, and you're trashing as of protocol. You can do that, but the scoring won't happen anymore because we have this concept called objects, where we basically track the a card within the zones that it's in. So now it's in a certain, well, I guess in the play area, and then it moves to the archives, which means that it's considered a new object, and the scoring that you were attempting doesn't work anymore because you're not, well, the object that you were trying to score doesn't exist anymore. So basically, you can do it, you can trash the SF protocol, but you will end up with an SF protocol in your archives, which I'm not sure if that's what you want to achieve. So
And the
Nice.
reason this works this way is because you have to pay the cost first, and then there's a checkpoint, because there's always a checkpoint after you pay a cost. And the checkpoint spawns the reaction window, which is where ob happens, and you resolve ob's ability in full, and then you go on to resolve the ability, which in this case is scoring the agenda.
This isn't an ob ability, it's just an Azov protocol ability, but I know you all clarified on how Azov works with Sansan City Grid in terms of like if you trash the Sansan City Grid. Is that the same rationale, or
No.
it's a different
So
situation? Okay.
so Sansan well, okay, so we need to be in a specific situation for it to work differently, right? If you have an as of protocol with exactly 2 advancement counters on it and a res Sansan City Grid, you have met the advancement requirement for ASF because Sansan is lowering it, right?
Right.
If you trash the Sansan, that will mean that you've no longer met the advancement requirement. And we have added a rule in CR 1.6 to make this very clear. You can't pay a cost in a way that means you no longer meet the restrictions to do the thing you were paying the cost for in the first place.
Cool.
So if a reaction the cost uh, messes with your ability to resolve the effect, that's okay. But you can't actually pay a cost that means you weren't allowed to resolve the effect to begin with.
That makes sense.
So if the
Um,
ASIF has 3 advancements on it and is able to be scored without the Sansan, then yeah, you can totally trash Sansan to its ability, trigger ob off the Sansan, and then install over the ASIF and not get to score it. But you can't uh, just fail to score the ASIF by trashing the Sansan and increasing its advancement requirement. You're not allowed to do that.
cool. Do you want to take the next question? Can I trash a reconstruction contract and put the counters from reconstruction contract on the new card I find with ob?
Construction contract. Okay, so yes. So let's follow the same steps, right? So you trigger the ability, you pay the cost, which is trashing reconstruction contract. There's a checkpoint. Checkpoint sees, hey, you met the trigger condition for ob's ability. So you get to resolve ob's ability. And then when that's done, and you've got your new installed and res card, we go back and we resolve reconstruction contract's ability. So you can put the advancement counters on uh, the new card. And one other detail there is that since you did trash the reconstruction contract, what happened to those counters? Those advancement counters are sitting in the set aside zone, waiting for that ability to resolve. Um, However, there's a weird corner case which results from the no change in game state rule that Ruben mentioned earlier. Uh, and what that is that you do need to have something that you could have used reconstruction contract on already on the board. So there needs to be an advanceable card that you could trigger reconstruction contract to put counters on
Now, who do I have to prove
in
that
order to
to?
trigger its ability in the first place.
Right. Now, who do I have to prove that to? My opponent, the judge, who? Like, who do I show? Hey, I've got this ice wall that you can't see. It's not res, but yeah, I can advance
Yeah,
it.
so uh this is an organized play question. We don't have an official answer from the OP team, but I was chatting with some folks yesterday, and uh, so it's right, like it's a little bit different than the situation where it's like I'm going to advance a card normally. How do I prove that it's an advanceable card?
Right.
Uh, and in that sort of normal situation, the answer is you don't have to prove that. It's just part of the game. If you can't follow those rules, then the game is just broken, and you're probably going to get it's probably going to get noticed that you're cheating or just really confused. Um, but in this situation, it's a little trickier because it's not clear which card is allowing you to meet the condition, and you don't ever actually have advancement counters on that card. There just needs to sort of be one installed somewhere. Um, so what I will be recommending to the organized play team is that the corp would have to indicate, hey, this is a legal card for me to meet this check and be able to trigger reconstruction contact. So I'm going to trash it, but then actually put the counters on this other card.
Cool. Um,
Obviously, if you have anything that's rezzed that's advanceable, like a piece of ice that can be advanced, it's not a problem because you just indicate that one and it's already clear.
that makes sense.
But
So,
yeah, it is a situation that could come up, and like the rules just say you have to do the right thing. The rules themselves aren't super concerned with uh, sort of making you prove that you're playing correctly in all cases. There are some cases where we do that, and actually we expanded on one of them uh, for the purpose of the additional costs with OB question um, to make that work more cleanly. Uh, but yeah, there's an extent to which the rules uh, have to work with the conceit of the game, which is the corp has hidden information, and there are rules that they have to follow, which the runner is not going to be able to verify without seeing that hidden information. So it's an organized play policy consideration, like when is it reasonable to call a judge and say, hey, something's fishy here. Can you confirm that this card that I installed protecting a server or that the corp installed protecting a server is actually a piece of ice? Uh, like there are certainly situations where you could call a judge for that, and that would be reasonable. I don't think a judge would be happy if you uh, did that for every single installed card of the game. uh, so that's sort of a policy question that's sort of beyond our team's scope. Is like, but yeah, there's it's a weird scenario.
and I think this one I'll just say the answer to. If the reconstruction contract does not have any counters on it, you can't trash it because of no change in game state. That's a quick one. That's on me.
There's nothing to
Yeah, that's on me. Ruben, do you want to take the next one? If you score an Azov protocol, can you use the trash to go get a reconstruction contract so you get meat damage counters on your reconstruction contract?
Yeah, so this follows the same principle as sort of I guess the previous question. So we have you pay the cost of trashing a card. You have a checkpoint. Then you up meets its trigger condition. You use Up's ability to get a reconstruction contract, and then the on score. Well, the score happens then after that, and then like the reconstruction contract is already rest, and then you do the meat damage, and so reconstruction contract will get its um, well, counters on it. And I think in the chat we also had a similar question. So it's the same thing with Malapert. So you can tutor, like you can find your Malapert, and then a Malapert will see the score, and then you can use Malapert to find another card.
That makes sense. Um, and
Oh,
I
it was
think,
also there.
yeah, no, I just added it because I saw it in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was thinking that those were analogous, but I was not confident that they were. So thank you for clarifying that. Jamie, what about Alexa Belsky? This is kind of the opposite, where the ability doesn't work as smoothly, right? If I use Alexa Belsky to shuffle my cards from HQ, can I go get those HQ cards that I'm shuffling in?
You cannot because you haven't resolved Alexa's ability yet. You just paid the cost. The ability is waiting to resolve after the reaction window where Ob's ability is happening. So the cards from HQ are still in HQ. You haven't shuffled them in yet.
Makes sense. Now this one I shudder at. If you let's say I have a tier, and like any good player, I play multiple tiers in my deck, and I res a tier, and I trash another tier because it's a unique card. So does that trigger Ob?
So the answer to that is no, because um, it's actually the game rules that are thrashing the other tier. It's not you trashing it, and Up specifically says whenever you trash, so meaning the corp. So it's the same kind of thing with. I think we had like Architect where it says players cannot trash this ice, and then there's cases with Earth Station and what's the
Play
current?
strike.
Yeah, Employee Strike, where you once it's active you can actually make multiple servers, I think, and then the game rules will be trashing the cards. But
Yeah.
that's like
So
basically, yeah. Go
to
ahead.
make Earth Station work with that weird situation, we actually had to errata architect to say players can't trash it. In order that, okay, a checkpoint can trash it because that's not a player. When the E strike goes away and suddenly it's like, oh, you have two servers, you're not allowed to do that as Earth Station. So even if it's the player choosing which one to trash, which is what happens in the two different servers with Earth Station situation, it's the game that is doing the trashing. In the unique situation, it's the most recent one stays and the older one gets trashed. So there's not a choice involved there. But even if there were, it even if the player is making the choice, it's the game doing the trashing.
So same would happen if you like inversificated a Panchatantra architect onto an Awakening Center, and then you trash the Awakening Center, which happens a lot in Netrunner.
It's that yes, very common situation.
I'm mad that
It has
y'all.
definitely happened in a real game.
I'm mad that y'all fixed that. It's my favorite thing. Thank you for fixing it. I think timing wise, if you're watching now and you didn't know, over on the Metropole grid, they're gonna be playing with these cards, and that sounds super sweet. So I think we should wrap things up timing wise. But
Yeah.
I did want to give Ruben and Jamie just the chance to close off. Anything else that that comes to mind that you want to share with people today?
Right. So maybe I want to mention that if you, well, first of all, thanks for having us. Been very fun. And then I also want to mention that we have a Twitter account. I think it's Nisei_rules, where you can ask us questions, and we will try to answer them. Well, we make a commitment to answering them within a reasonable amount of time. So questions like these that have been come up on this stream, things like that.
Yeah, y'all are really good at that. You are fast. Um, Jamie, anything you want to say to close this out?
Yeah. If you have a more involved question or something you want to get into detail about, we also have an email address, rules@nisei.net. Um, and yeah, we'll be our next immediate project is getting the rulings for Midnight Sun cards written and uploaded to NetrunnerDB. So if you think of a question that you haven't seen anyone else ask, feel free to send that to us, and we'll try to get in there. Uh, Also, if you are interested in the details of the rules, check out Comprehensive Rules version 1.6. We've got both a just regular version and a version with changes highlighted up on the Comprehensive Rules Hub page on nisei.net. Um, you've got the changes highlighted version up on the screen there, which also has a very thorough change log. The regular version just has the highlights, which are mostly we expanded some stuff about costs. We expanded some stuff about when you have to reveal a card that you're installing to show that it fits an effect, like having the right printed res costs, but you're not resing it because of the additional costs. Uh, and then adding the new rules to support the new cards
Yeah,
in other ways.
yeah, and one of the most fun things you can, and this sounds like a joke when I mean it sincerely. One of the most fun things I have in Netrunner is just reading about weird rules cases, and like this is a gold mine. I've really enjoyed reading the updates. So thank you for.
Yeah.
I know your primary goal with the comprehensive rules document is not as a document to enjoy, and rather to facilitate people's enjoyment of the game of Netrunner. But I appreciate it as a fan of the comprehensive rules document. Um,
I enjoy the CR as itself as well. And I love hearing feedback about the changes. If anybody has, well, this way that you updated this still doesn't really make sense to me, or this rule that didn't get changed doesn't really make sense to me, or something that you particularly like, or whatever. I love hearing all that stuff. So um, yeah, feel free to tweet us, email us. Uh, we are here to Tierney say.
yeah, yeah. So you can send them emails. I'm just preparing one now.
Is Palangi uh any ice subtype?
Yeah, yeah. You can make it any ice subtype, which you need to make the
Okay.
and make the architect a bioroid, so
Did
you
you
can switch it onto the
Yeah.
awakening
I
center.
thought you said Contra
Oh yeah, yeah.
Chantra
No. Oh,
the
you're right.
first
You're
time you
right.
mentioned this,
Oh yeah,
which
yeah,
also
yeah.
works.
Oh, is Palangi? I think
But
Palangi's in.
it's just using more cards that have never actually seen much play.
Yeah, that's true. Good point. Okay. Panchatantra. Anyway, thank you so much for being on. We could have talked way more. I did kind of want to go through the comprehensive rules more, and I think the rules team has plenty to say. So hopefully we can do this again. Um,
Oh,
Thanks again. If you audience, if you are still with us, if you stick around here and you're interested to go see the Metrowall grid, we're gonna head over there. And thanks for joining me today. Um,
thanks for having us. Thanks for doing these interviews.
I had fun.
So,
I had a lot of fun too.
All right. Hello, everyone. So at this point, only my mic is live, and I'm just gonna vamp until that we go raid Andre. It's actually not me doing it. It's somebody who's I don't have. I'm a skilled hacker. That's how I got on here, but I didn't hack the ability to raid. All right, we can go ahead. Um, All right. See you at the Metropole grid, and we'll see what's going on with Midnight Sun.